There are few things in life that make a grown man want to scream into a pillow until he passes out. Paying taxes is one. Assemble it yourself, Swedish furniture with missing hex keys is another. But nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, compares to the white-hot, blinding rage induced by a certified letter from the Whispering Pines Homeowners Association. I stood on my front porch, the mid-July sun beating down on my neck, staring at the envelope in my hand. It was heavy, thick, the kind of stationery that screams, "We spent your dues on legal fees instead of fixing the potholes at the entrance." I didn't even have to open it to know who sent it. The return address label was perfectly centered, printed in a font that looked suspiciously like Comic Sans trying to be professional, and I could practically smell the lavender perfume wafting off the paper. Brenda. Brenda wasn't just the HOA president. She was a force of nature, if nature consisted entirely of passive-aggressive sticky notes and a tape measure clipped to a floral print belt. She was the kind of woman who would measure the distance between your marigolds to ensure uniform spacing. She was the reason my neighbor, Old Man Jenkins, had a stroke last year after she cited him for having a bird feeder that attracted unauthorized avian species. And now, she was coming for me. I ripped the envelope open, jaggedly tearing the top because I was shaking too much to find a letter opener. I unfolded the crisp, cream-colored paper. Dear Mr. Jack Thompson, it has come to the attention of the Architectural Review Committee, ARC, that the recent renovations to your primary residence, specifically the roof replacement completed on July 12th, are in direct violation of Article 4, Section 2, Paragraph C of the Whispering Pines Covenants, Conditions, and Restrictions, CCNRs. Specifically, the shingle color installed is slate gray. The approved color palette for the 2024 fiscal year mandates charcoal gray. While these hues may appear similar to the untrained eye, our analysis confirms a 4% variance in light absorption and a 6% deviation in cool tone saturation. You are hereby ordered to remediate this violation within 30 days. Failure to comply will result in a daily fine of $500 and may lead to a lien being placed upon your property. Sincerely, Brenda Higgins, President, Whispering Pines. I lowered the letter. I looked up at my roof. It was beautiful. It was a masterpiece of asphalt and fiberglass. I had just spent $22,000, my savings, my bonus, and the money I was going to use to fix up my '68 Mustang on this roof. My old roof had been leaking like a sieve. Every time it rained, I had to arrange a constellation of buckets in the attic. This new roof was solid. It was warranted for 50 years. And yes, it was gray. It was definitely gray. "You've got to be kidding me," I whispered to the empty street. I walked out to the curb and looked at my house. Then I looked at the house next door. Then I looked at the house across the street. They were all gray. Some were light gray, some were dark gray, some were gray that looked a little blue when the clouds came out. My roof looked exactly like every other roof in this subdivision. 4% variance in light absorption, I muttered, crumpling the letter in my fist. Who even talks like that? A high-pitched electric whine cut through the humid air. I froze. I knew that sound. It was the sound of impending doom. It was the sound of a 2022 Easy-Go Freedom RXV Elite electric golf cart with a custom lift kit. I turned my head slowly to the left. Sure enough, rounding the corner at a blistering 12 miles per hour was Brenda. She was wearing her uniform. A pastel pink polo shirt tucked into beige capris, a white visor that was just a little too tight, and oversized sunglasses that made her look like a confused insect. She pulled up to my curb, the golf cart tires crunching on the loose gravel I hadn't swept yet. Another violation waiting to happen, I was sure. She didn't get out. She never got out unless she had to. She just sat there, resting her forearms on the steering wheel, smiling that tight, lipless smile that never reached her eyes. "Good morning, Jack," she chirped. It was the cheerfulness of a shark spotting a swimmer with a cramp. "Did you get the mail?" "I got it, Brenda," I said, walking down the driveway, the crumpled letter still in my hand. "I got it. Is this a joke?" "I assure you, the aesthetic integrity of Whispering Pines is never a joke," she said, her voice dropping an octave into her official business tone. "We take our property values very seriously." "Brenda, look at the roof," I said, pointing up. "It's gray. It's dark gray. It's the same color as the road. It's the same color as your soul, Brenda." I shouldn't have said that last part. Her smile twitched, but she held it. "It is slate gray, Jack," she corrected, reaching into the passenger seat and pulling out a massive 3-ring binder. She flipped it open with practiced efficiency to a page full of paint chips. "See this? This is charcoal gray. This is the approved color. It has a warm undertone to complement the beige siding required in Phase 2 of the development. Your roof is slate gray. It has a cool undertone. It clashes." "It clashes?" I asked, my voice rising. "With what? The sky? It's a roof. It's 20 feet in the air." "It creates visual discord," she said simply. "And we confirmed it with the spectrophotometer." I blinked. "The what?" "The spectrophotometer," she repeated, savoring the syllables. "I purchased one for the with the surplus budget last year. It measures the precise wavelength of light reflected off a surface. I climbed up there myself while you were at work on Tuesday. Your roof reflects light at 480 nanometers. Charcoal gray reflects at 520 nanometers. It's simply not compliant." I felt the blood rushing to my ears. "You climbed on my roof? You trespassed on my property, climbed a ladder, and pointed a laser beam at my shingles?" "The CC&Rs grant the board the right to access the exterior of any property for compliance verification," she recited. She knew the bylaws better than I knew my own mother's birthday. "I was just doing my job, Jack. I'm trying to help you. If we let you have a slate roof, then the Johnsons will want a dove gray roof, and then the Millers will want a silver roof, and before you know it, we're living in a carnival. Chaos, Jack. Anarchy." "It's $22,000, Brenda," I shouted. A neighbor walking a dog across the street stopped to watch. I didn't care. "I can't just remediate it. That means ripping it off and starting over. I don't have another 20 grand lying around." Brenda sighed, a long, exaggerated exhalation of pity. "Well, perhaps you should have consulted the approved materials list before you hired that discount contractor." She sniffed. She actually sniffed. "He wasn't a discount contractor," I said through gritted teeth. "He was licensed and bonded." "He played loud rock music," she noted. I had 3 complaints about the noise. "It's a construction site. They were using nail guns." "Regardless," she said, shifting the golf cart into reverse. "You have 30 days. The clock started yesterday. If it's not fixed, the fines begin. And Jack? Don't make us involve the lawyers. We have a very aggressive retainer." She backed up, the reverse beeper chirping like a countdown timer to my financial ruin, and then zipped away, her ponytail bobbing in the wind. I stood there for a long time. I looked at my perfectly good, watertight, expensive, slightly too cool-toned roof. "War," I said softly. "You want war, Brenda? You got it." I spent the next 3 days reading. I didn't read novels. I didn't read the news. I read the Declaration of Covenants, Conditions, and Restrictions of the Whispering Pines Homeowners Association. It was 140 pages of legal gibberish, formatted in single-spaced Times New Roman. It was the most boring document ever created by mankind, likely drafted by a committee of demons in a basement level of hell. But I needed a loophole. I needed a way out. I sat at my kitchen table, surrounded by empty coffee mugs and highlighter pens. My eyes were bleeding. My brain felt like it was leaking out of my ears. Article 3. Fences. No help there. Article 4. Landscaping. No. Article 5. Exterior maintenance. Here it was. Section 2, paragraph C. Roofing materials must be of high-quality asphalt, composite, or tile. Metal roofing is prohibited unless copper over bay windows. Color must be consistent with the community aesthetic, defined as a monochrome, shade of gray. Patterns are prohibited unless geometric in nature and approved by the RC. I read it again. Monochrome shade of gray. Patterns are prohibited unless geometric in nature. I highlighted the sentence. I stared at it until the neon yellow ink burned into my retinas. Monochrome shade of gray, I muttered. Brenda had said my roof was the wrong shade, but the bylaw didn't explicitly say charcoal gray in the text. It just said monochrome shade of gray. The charcoal requirement was likely in an addendum or a board resolution, which held less legal weight than the primary CC&Rs unless it had been voted on by a quorum of homeowners. I grabbed my laptop and logged into the HOA portal. I dug through the meeting minutes for the last 10 years. It took me 6 hours. I ordered a pizza. I didn't even taste it. I just chewed mechanically while I scrolled. And then I found it. Or rather, I found the lack of it. There was no vote. The charcoal gray mandate wasn't a ratified amendment. It was just a guideline published by the Architectural Review Committee 3 years ago. Brenda had written it herself. I could tell because she used the word herewith 3 times in one sentence. I had her. I printed everything, the CC&Rs, the minutes, the state statutes regarding HOA overreach. I organized it all into a binder. I put on my best suit, the one I wore to weddings and funerals, and I prepared for the monthly board meeting. The meeting was held in the community clubhouse, a sterile room that smelled of floor wax and stale donuts. There were about 20 people there, mostly retirees who had nothing better to do on a Tuesday night than complain about teenagers skateboarding on the sidewalk. At the front of the room sat the board. There was Bob, the treasurer, who was asleep with his eyes open. There was Susan, the secretary, who was furiously typing on a laptop that I suspected wasn't even on. And in the center, sitting on a slightly higher chair than everyone else, was Brenda. She banged a wooden gavel. "I call this meeting to order." We went through the usual motions. The landscaping budget was over because of the drought. The pool pump needed a new filter. Mrs. Gable wanted to know if she could plant hydrangeas. Answer: only if they are white or blue. Pink is considered vulgar. Finally, Brenda looked over her glasses. "New business. Mr. Thompson, I believe you requested time to speak regarding your situation." I stood up. I walked to the podium. I laid my binder down with a heavy thud. "Brenda, members of the board," I began, my voice steady. I am here to appeal the violation notice regarding my roof. Brenda sighed loud enough for the back row to hear. Jack, we've been over this. The spectrophotometer doesn't lie. The spectrophotometer is irrelevant, I said. I have reviewed the CCNRs. Article VI, Section 2, states only that the roof must be a monochrome shade of gray. It does not specify. Charcoal. My roof is gray. Therefore, it is compliant. The guidelines specify charcoal, Brenda snapped. The guidelines are not the covenants, I countered, opening my binder. According to state law, restriction of property rights must be explicitly stated in the recorded deed restrictions. An IRC guideline cannot supersede the primary governing documents without a 67% vote of the membership. I checked the minutes, Brenda. There was never a vote. The room went quiet. Bob, the treasurer, actually blinked. Susan stopped typing. Brenda's face turned a shade of red that definitely wasn't on the approved palette. The board has the authority to interpret the covenants to maintain harmony, she hissed. We have broad discretion. That's the legal term, Jack. Broad discretion. Discretion is not a license to be arbitrary, I said. My roof is high quality. It matches the general aesthetic. You are enforcing a personal preference, not a rule. Brenda stood up. She wasn't tall, but in that moment she seemed to inflate with pure bureaucratic rage. Mr. Thompson, she said, her voice trembling. We are trying to maintain a standard here. If you want to live in a place where people do whatever they want, move to the county. But as long as you live in Whispering Pines, you will follow the rules as I interpret them. She slammed the gavel down. Appeal denied. You have 26 days remaining. If that roof isn't charcoal gray by August 15th, I will personally file the lien on your house. I will foreclose on you, Jack. I will take your house, sell it to someone who appreciates the subtleties of color theory, and I will use the proceeds to buy a better spectrophotometer. Next item. I stood there, stunned. It wasn't about the rules. It wasn't about the gray. It was about power. She didn't care that she was wrong. She cared that I had challenged her. I walked back to my seat, my heart hammering against my ribs. I felt a hand on my arm. It was Old Man Jenkins. Give 'em hell, kid, he whispered. I looked at Brenda, who was now lecturing a young mother about leaving a tricycle in her driveway for more than 4 hours. Oh, I will, I muttered. I really, really will. I drove home in silence. I parked in my driveway and looked at my roof. The moonlight hit it, and it glowed a soft, beautiful, illegal slate gray. I couldn't win in court. Well, I could, but it would take 2 years and $50,000 in legal fees. Brenda knew that. The HOA had insurance to pay for their lawyers. I had to pay out of pocket. She could bankrupt me before a judge ever banged a gavel. I went inside and grabbed a beer. I sat on the couch and stared at the wall. Think, Jack, I said. Think like an engineer. Problem. Roof is wrong color. Solution. Change color. Constraints. Must be gray. Must be monochrome or geometric pattern. I took a sip of beer. Geometric pattern. I pulled the bylaws up on my phone again. Patterns are prohibited, unless geometric in nature. What is a digital image? It's pixels. What are pixels? They are squares. Squares are geometric. Therefore, a pixelated image is a geometric pattern. And the color constraint? Monochrome shade of gray. Grayscale. Black and white photos are literally composed entirely of shades of gray. A slow, dark smile spread across my face. It was the kind of smile that usually precedes a villain monologuing in a movie. If she wanted gray, I would give her gray. If she wanted aesthetic cohesion, I would give her a work of art. I needed dirt on Brenda. If I was going to play this game, I needed to know who I was dealing with. I opened my laptop and went to one of those sketchy background check websites. I paid the $19.95 fee. I typed in Brenda Higgins. I found the usual stuff. A speeding ticket in 1998, a civil suit over a fence line in 2005. And then I found it. Florida, 2008. Arrested for disorderly intoxication and assault with a deadly weapon. I clicked the link to the police report. The deadly weapon was a frozen butterball turkey. Apparently, Brenda had tried to return a Thanksgiving turkey to a grocery store in July, and when the manager refused, she swung the bird at his head. But the report wasn't the best part. The best part was the mugshot. It was glorious. Her hair was a bird's nest of chaotic frizz. Her mascara had run down her cheeks in 2 distinct black rivers. Her mouth was open in a primal scream of entitlement. Her eyes were wild, pointing in slightly different directions. It was the face of pure, unadulterated madness. I saved the image. I zoomed in. "Hello, Brenda," I whispered. I opened Photoshop. I cropped the image. I turned it into a high-contrast grayscale bitmap. Then I overlaid a grid. If I used custom-printed ceramic tiles, the kind used for commercial mosaics, I could recreate this image. I did the math. My roof was roughly 2,000 square feet. If I used 6-inch tiles, I grabbed my phone and dialed my buddy Mike. Mike was a lawyer, but the cool kind who wore Hawaiian shirts and handled mostly DUIs and petty disputes. "Jack?" he answered. "It's 11 p.m. "Mike, quick question, hypothetically." "Oh, God. Is a photograph considered a geometric pattern if it is composed entirely of square tiles?" Silence on the other end. Then, the sound of a lighter clicking. "Technically, yes. It's a mosaic. Mosaics are geometric arrangements of tesserae. Why? And if a contract says a surface must be a monochrome shade of gray, does a grayscale image count? As long as every individual pixel or tile is a shade of gray, black, or white, yes, the aggregate effect is gray. Why are you asking this, Jack? What are you going to do?" "I'm going to comply, Mike," I said, watching Brenda's screaming face on my monitor. "I'm going to comply so hard her head spins." "Jack, don't do anything illegal." "It's not illegal, Mike. It's malicious compliance. The best kind." I hung up. Now I just needed a contractor. I needed someone crazy. Someone who didn't care about Brenda's list of approved vendors. Someone who likely had a grudge against authority figures. I went to Craigslist. I skipped the professional ads with logos and bonded guarantees. I looked for the guys who typed in all caps. And there, halfway down the page, I found him. Roofing. Demolition. No questions asked. Cash only. I hate permits. Call Sal. I dialed the number. "Yeah?" A voice like a cement mixer answered. "Sal? I have a job. It's a roof. It needs to be done fast, and it needs to be done quietly." "I ain't burying no bodies, pal. No bodies. Just tiles. Custom tiles. And I need it done under a tarp so the neighbors can't see until the unveil." Sal chuckled. It sounded like gravel crunching. "Under a tarp? Sneaky. I like sneaky. What's the catch?" "The catch is that the tiles, when assembled, form a 40-foot picture of a woman screaming." There was a long pause. "Is it an ex-wife?" Sal asked. "HOA president." "I'll do it for half price," Sal said immediately. "When do we start?" "Tomorrow," I said. "Meet me at the diner on 4th. Bring a truck. I leaned back in my chair. The fear was gone. The anger was gone. In its place was a cold, calculating determination. Brenda wanted a gray roof. She wanted me to follow the rules. I looked at the mugshot one last time. "You're going to look great from Google Earth, Brenda," I said. The diner smelled of bacon grease and despair, the kind of place where the coffee is served boiling hot to distract you from the taste. I sat in a corner booth, a large roll of blueprints, which were actually just the pixelated grid layouts of Brenda's face, tucked under my arm. Sal walked in at 8 a.m. sharp. You couldn't miss him. He was shaped like a vending machine with legs. He wore work boots that had seen more combat than a tank, and a t-shirt that said, "OSHA is a small town in Russia." He had a scar running through his left eyebrow and hands the size of catcher's mitts. He slid into the booth opposite me. The table creaked. "You Jack?" he grunted. "I'm Jack. Show me the goods." I unrolled the diagram. It looked like a giant paint-by-numbers grid. I had mapped every square foot of my roof to a corresponding coordinate. "This is the layout," I explained, pointing to the grid. "We're using 12-inch ceramic composite tiles. They're industrial grade, custom printed. I overnighted the order from a supplier in Nevada who usually does casino floors. They arrive Thursday." Sal squinted at the paper. He traced a line with a finger that was missing the tip of the nail. "And this is the lady?" I pulled out the original mugshot photo. Sal looked at the photo, then at the grid, then back at the photo. A slow grin spread across his face, revealing a gold tooth. "That's beautiful," he whispered. "Look at the rage. It's like a Renaissance painting. Who is she?" "Brenda Higgins, the woman who told me my gray roof was the wrong gray." Sal slammed his hand on the table. A ketchup bottle jumped. "I hate HOAs. My cousin Vinny got fined $3,000 because his mailbox was 2 inches too high. 2 inches! They put a lien on his truck." "Then you're the right man for the job," I said. "But Sal, listen to me. This has to be precise. If the tiles are out of order, she'll just look like a blurry blob. It has to be perfect. We need to see every wrinkle of anger, every pixel of malice." "Don't you worry," Sal said, cracking his knuckles. "I'm an artist. I treat every roof like the Sistine Chapel, except with more tar. But we gotta be fast. If she sees us laying down picture tiles, she's gonna shut us down." "That's why we tarp it," I said. "We tell her it's a specialty European curing process. The adhesive is UV sensitive. We can't expose it to sunlight until it's fully set. We keep the tarp up until the very last second. Until the deadline." Sal nodded appreciatively. "The big reveal. I love it. But what about the noise? She gonna come sniffing around?" "She will," I said. "She definitely will. Can you handle her?" Sal laughed. "Pal, I handled a frantic raccoon in a chimney once with my bare hands. I can handle a Karen in a golf cart." The tiles arrived on Thursday on 2 pallets wrapped in black plastic. I had them delivered to the garage so Brenda couldn't snoop. I opened the first box. They were heavy, textured, slate-like ceramic. To the naked eye, up close, each tile just looked like a random smear of gray or black. But each one had a coordinate stamped on the back. A1, A2, B4. It was a jigsaw puzzle from hell. Sal and his crew, 3 guys named Tony, Little Tony and Big Tony, showed up on Friday morning. They worked like a special ops team, if special ops teams smoked a pack of cigarettes every hour. By 9 a.m., the old new roof was being torn off. The sound of ripping shingles echoed through the neighborhood. By 9:15 a.m., Brenda was there. I was watching from the living room window. I saw the white golf cart zip around the corner. She slammed on the brakes in front of my driveway. She didn't just look mad, she looked suspicious. I walked out the front door. Sal was already climbing down the ladder, a cigarette dangling from his lip. "What is going on here?" Brenda shrieked. She was holding her clipboard like a shield. "Remediation, Brenda," I called out, putting on my best fake smile. "Just like you asked. We're replacing the roof." She squinted at Sal. "Who is this? Is he on the approved vendor list?" "I'm a specialist," Sal interjected, his voice gravelly. He walked right up to the edge of the property line. "Salvatore, Higgins, no relation." "I don't recognize your truck," Brenda said, eyeing the rusted Ford F-350 that was leaking oil onto the street. "It's a vintage restoration vehicle," Sal said smoothly. "Listen, lady, we're doing high-end work here. This is Italian slate composite. Very delicate." "Why are you putting up a tent?" Brenda pointed. Big Tony and Little Tony were currently erecting a massive blue tarp structure over the entire roofline. It looked like a circus tent had collapsed on my house. "UV sensitivity," I said quickly. "The bonding agents are photoreactive. If the sun hits them before they cure, the warranty is void. It has to stay covered for exactly 26 days. Brenda narrowed her eyes. She looked at me, then at Sal, then at the tarp. She tapped her pen against her clipboard. Tap, tap, tap. "I want to see the materials," she demanded. "I want to verify the color." "Can't," Sal said. "They're in vacuum-sealed packs. Once I open them, they gotta go down in 3 minutes or they explode." "They explode?" Brenda asked, taking a half step back. "Chemically speaking," Sal said, making a vague explosion gesture with his hands. "Boom. Foam everywhere. Very toxic. You don't want that on your beige Caprice." Brenda looked horrified. She looked at me. "Jack, if there is any toxic runoff..." "Totally eco-friendly once cured, Brenda. It's basically recycled dolphins. Very green." I was rambling now, but she seemed confused enough to buy it. "Well," she huffed, "I will be monitoring this closely, very closely, and I expect the color to be charcoal, not slate, not gunmetal, charcoal." "It'll be the darkest thing you've ever seen," Sal promised. She glared at us one last time, then reversed the cart and sped off. Sal turned to me and wiped sweat from his forehead. "Recycled dolphins? Really?" I panicked, I admitted. "Whatever. She's gone. Tony, get the adhesive. We got a face to build." The next 2 weeks were a blur of anxiety and controlled chaos. Living under a tarp in the middle of July is not pleasant. My house was dark. It was hot. It felt like I was living in a cave. But every day, I could hear the thump, thump, thump of tiles going down. I climbed up there every evening to check the progress. It was impossible to see the full image from the roof itself. It just looked like a random assortment of light and dark tiles. It was like standing on a pixelated television screen. You're too close to see the picture. "Are you sure this is right?" I asked Sal on day 12. We were standing near the chimney, which was currently located right in the middle of Brenda's left nostril. "Trust the grid, boss," Sal said. He was holding a map. "We're at row 40. We just finished the upper lip. Tomorrow we start the eyes. The eyes are tricky, lots of shading." "Make sure they look crazy," I said. "They look crazy," Sal assured me. "I put the extra glossy tiles in the pupils. They're gonna shimmer." Meanwhile, Brenda was escalating. She started doing drive-bys 3 times a day. She brought binoculars. One day, I caught her trying to launch a drone from the sidewalk. I ran out. "Brenda, no drones, privacy violation." "I am inspecting the perimeter," she shouted, struggling to sync the controller. "That tarp is an eyesore. It violates the temporary structure guidelines." It's construction equipment, Brenda. It's exempt! The drone buzzed to life, lifted 3 feet into the air, and immediately veered sideways into my oak tree. It crashed with a satisfying crunch of plastic. "That's coming out of your dues!" she screamed, shaking her fist at the tree. I went back inside and called Mike. "She crashed a drone," I told him. "Keep documenting," Mike said. "How's the roof?" "It's almost done. We're at the forehead." "God help us all," Mike sighed. Day 25. The deadline was tomorrow. Sal and his crew laid the final tile at 4:00 p.m. It was a dark, black tile, part of the messy hair in the upper right corner. Sal stood up and wiped his hands on his pants. "It's done." We climbed down the ladder. We stood in the driveway, looking up at the massive blue tarp that concealed our secret weapon. "You nervous?" Sal asked. "Terrified," I said. "She's going to have a stroke." "Good," Sal said. "That's what you pay me for." "Hey, when do we drop the curtain?" "Tomorrow at noon," I said. "That's when she scheduled the final inspection. She's bringing the whole board." "I'll be here," Sal said. "I brought popcorn." I didn't sleep that night. I laid in bed, staring at the ceiling, imagining the view from above. I wondered if the satellites would pick it up. I wondered if aliens would look down and wonder why humans worshipped a screaming middle-aged woman. The next morning, the air was thick with tension. I made coffee. I put on my best shirt. I walked out to the front lawn. At 11:55 a.m., the procession arrived. It wasn't just Brenda. It was the treasurer, the secretary, the VP, and about 6 other neighbors Brenda had deputized as witnesses. They parked a fleet of golf carts along the curb. It looked like a very lame biker gang invasion. Brenda marched up the driveway. She was wearing a new outfit, a charcoal gray pantsuit. It was a power move. "Well, Jack," she said, checking her watch, "it is noon. The 30 days are up. Is the remediation complete?" "It is," I said. "And is the roof charcoal gray?" "It is entirely composed of grayscale elements, yes." "Good," she said, pen poised over her clipboard. "Remove the tarp. Let us inspect." I looked at Sal, who was standing by the corner of the house, holding the main tether rope. He winked at me. "Ladies and gentlemen of the board," I announced, raising my voice, "I present to you the compliant roof." I nodded to Sal. Sal yanked. The rope. The knots released. The heavy blue tarp rippled. Gravity took over. The tarp slid down the slope of the roof with a heavy whoosh, pooling onto the lawn like a fallen parachute. The sun hit the roof. For a moment, there was silence. Absolute, heavy silence. The tiles caught the light. The glossy pupils shimmered. The matte black of the open mouth absorbed the sun. The shading on the cheeks was exquisite. It was massive. It was undeniable. It was Brenda. It was Brenda, 20 years younger, drunk, screaming, and captured in high-definition ceramic mosaic. Her eyes were 4 feet wide. Her mouth was a gaping maw of rage directly above the master bedroom window. The treasurer dropped his coffee cup. It shattered on the driveway. Susan, the secretary, gasped and covered her mouth. "And Brenda?" Brenda didn't move. She stared up at herself. She stared at the giant, screaming face that was screaming back at the heavens. She turned pale. Then she turned red. Then she turned a color that I'm pretty sure wasn't in the visible spectrum. Her mouth opened, and in a moment of perfect poetic symmetry, she made the exact same face as the roof. "What?" she screamed, her voice cracking. Is that? That, I said, pointing up, is a geometric pattern composed of monochrome gray tiles, as per Article 5, Section 2. It's me! She shrieked. She was vibrating. It's my mugshot! Is it? I asked innocently. I just thought it was an abstract representation of neighborhood spirit. But now that you mention it… Take it down! She howled. She actually stomped her foot. Take it down right now! I can't, I said. It's industrial adhesive. That roof is there for 50 years, Brenda. It'll outlive us all. She made a sound like a tea kettle boiling over, and then she did the only thing she could think of. She pulled out her phone and dialed 911. Police! She screamed into the phone. I want to report a hate crime, a vandalism, an assault on my dignity. Sal leaned over to me, chewing on a toothpick. Worth every penny, he whispered. Every single penny, I agreed. Now we just had to wait for the cops. And I had a feeling Officer Miller was going to love this. The response time of the Whispering Pines Police Department was surprisingly brisk, likely because Brenda had used the words active threat and psychological warfare in the same breath. Within 6 minutes, 2 cruisers came screaming around the corner, lights flashing, cutting through the midday heat like a disco panic attack. Brenda was still standing in the middle of the street, pointing a trembling finger at my roof. She looked like a statue of a dictator toppling over. 2 officers stepped out. I recognized the first one, Officer Miller. He was a veteran of the force, a man who had the weary, heavy-lidded expression of someone who had spent 30 years mediating disputes over hedge heights and barking dogs. The second was younger, Officer Davis, who looked like he still had hope for humanity. That hope was about to die. Miller adjusted his belt and walked up the driveway, hitching his thumbs into his vest. He looked at Brenda, then he looked at me, and then, inevitably, he looked up. He stopped walking. He just stood there, his head tilted back. He took off his sunglasses. He squinted. He put his sunglasses back on. Okay, Miller said, his voice flat. Okay. Officer! Brenda shrieked, rushing toward him. Thank God you're here. Arrest him. Arrest him immediately. Miller held up a hand. Ma'am, please lower your voice. Now, what seems to be the problem? The problem? She gestured wildly at the roof. Look at it. It's me. It's a hate crime. He has put a 40-foot mural of my face on his house to terrorize me. Miller looked back up at the roof. The giant ceramic Brenda screamed silently at the clouds. Is that you, ma'am? Miller asked. It's very detailed. It's my mugshot! Brenda yelled, stomping her foot. From 2008, which was expunged. Well, mostly expunged. He hacked the government. He's a cyber terrorist. Miller turned to me. I was leaning against Sal's truck, sipping a glass of iced tea I had poured specifically for this moment. Sir, Miller said, walking over. Is this your property? It is, officer, I said calmly. And did you authorize this renovation? I did. I was cited by the HOA for having a roof that was the wrong shade of gray. I was ordered to replace it with a monochromatic gray material. I have complied. That roof is 100% ceramic tile, in varying shades of gray. Officer Davis, the rookie, had walked around to get a better angle. I saw his shoulders shaking. He had turned his body camera away from me and was pretending to cough, but it sounded a lot like a strangled snort. Sir, Miller said, sighing. It's a picture of the neighbor. You have to admit, that's provocative. Provocative? It's art, officer, I said. It's a tribute. Brenda is the face of this neighborhood. I wanted to honor her leadership. Is it illegal to put a mural on my own roof? Miller rubbed his temples. Technically, no, unless it's obscene. Is it obscene? It's just a face, I said. A face in a moment of passion. Passion for poultry, I believe. It's harassment, Brenda wailed from the sidewalk. He's mocking me. I feel threatened. Every time I look out my window, I'm going to see my own nostrils. Ma'am, Miller called out, does the roof have any text on it? Any threats? Any profanity? No, but the eyes. They follow you. Miller walked back to Brenda. Ma'am, listen to me. This is a civil dispute. It's ugly, it's petty, and frankly, it's the weirdest thing I've seen since the guy on Elm Street built a fence out of mannequins. But it's not a crime. He hasn't threatened you. He hasn't vandalized your property. He put shingles on his own house. But it's gray, Brenda sputtered. You told him to make it gray, Miller pointed out. He looked at the roof again. And that is definitely gray. I want to press charges. For what? Roofing in the first degree? Miller shook his head. We're leaving, Brenda. Call your lawyer. And maybe, I don't know, stop measuring people's grass. Miller turned back to me. He leaned in close, his voice dropping to a whisper. Between you and me, he said. Nice shading on the chin. Thank you, officer, I said. My contractor is an artist. As they drove away, Officer Davis was openly taking a photo of the roof with his personal cell phone. Brenda stood on the sidewalk alone. The board members had quietly dispersed, sensing that being associated with this disaster was bad for their social standing. She looked at me. I raised my iced tea glass in a silent toast. She didn't scream. She didn't yell. She just deflated. She got into her golf cart and drove away in silence, the electric motor whining sadly. If I thought the police visit was the climax, I was wrong. The police visit was just the trailer. The movie started 2 hours later. Officer Davis must have posted that photo to Reddit or Twitter or whatever platform cops use to share the absurdity of their shifts. Because by 3:00 p.m., the news vans arrived. First, it was the local Channel 5 affiliate. Then it was the state news. Then, around 5:00 p.m., I heard the distinctive thwup, thwup, thwup of a helicopter. I went out to the backyard. High above, a news chopper was circling my house, getting the aerial shot. My phone blew up. Friends I hadn't spoken to in high school were texting me. Is that Brenda? Dude, you're a legend. Can I buy a tile? I turned on the TV. There it was. Breaking news. Suburban standoff. A Whispering Pines homeowner has taken Homeowners Association disputes to new heights, literally. Aerial footage shows a massive high-definition mosaic of what appears to be the HOA president's mugshot on a residential roof. The anchor was struggling to keep a straight face. They cut to an interview with Sal, who I had explicitly told not to talk to the press. Yeah, it's high-grade composite, Sal was saying to a reporter, leaning against his rusty truck and smoking a cigar. The client wanted to capture the essence of the community. We call this piece the Scream of the Suburbs. It's a commentary on the duality of man, and it's warranted for hail damage. I buried my face in my hands. Sal was enjoying this way too much. By the next morning, the mugshot roof was a global meme. People were photoshopping it onto the White House. Someone made a cryptocurrency called Brenda Coin. The HOA's voicemail box was full. Their email server crashed. And then the summons came. An emergency board meeting. Mandatory attendance. I walked into the clubhouse that night like a gladiator entering the Colosseum. The room was packed, standing room only, but the mood had shifted. People weren't glaring at me. They were looking at me with something else. Awe? Fear? Respect? Brenda was sitting at the head table. She looked terrible. She was wearing big sunglasses inside, likely to hide the fact that she hadn't slept. "This meeting is called to order," she rasped. Her voice was gone. "We are here to discuss the situation," Bob the treasurer said, taking over. "Mr. Thompson, the board has voted to levy a fine of $5,000 for the installation of offensive imagery." I stood up. I didn't need a binder this time. I had the crowd. "Define offensive," I said. "It's a picture of a criminal," Brenda croaked, leaping up. "It's a mug shot." "It's a picture of you, Brenda," I said calmly. "Are you saying that your face is offensive? Are you saying that a photograph of our president is obscene? If so, we should probably take down your portrait in the lobby." The crowd tittered. "It's the context," Bob argued. "It brings the community into disrepute." "Disrepute?" I countered. "Property values are up. I checked Zillow this morning. My house is the most viewed property in the state. People are calling it a landmark. We're on the map, Bob. We're famous." "We're a laughingstock," Brenda screamed. "We were a laughingstock when you measured Mrs. Higgins' petunias with a ruler," a voice shouted from the back. I turned. It was Old Man Jenkins. He stood up, leaning on his cane. "I've lived here for 20 years, Jenkins said, his voice shaking with age and rage. "And I've paid my dues, and I've taken the fines, but that roof is the best damn thing that's ever happened to this place. It's justice, pure, slate-gray justice." A few people clapped, then more. Then the room was applauding. Brenda looked around, wild-eyed. She was losing them. The tyranny of the tape measure was crumbling. I held up a hand. The room quieted. "I'm willing to make a deal," I said. Brenda looked at me. "What?" "I will paint over the roof," I said. A collective groan went through the room. Sal, standing in the back, looked disappointed. "But," I continued, "on 3 conditions." "Name them," Bob said quickly. He just wanted the news helicopters to go away. "1," I said. "Brenda resigns as president. Effective immediately." Brenda gasped. She looked at the board. Bob refused to make eye contact. Susan was studying her cuticles. "2," I said. "My HOA fees are waived. For life. Consider it a consultation fee for helping you update your aesthetic guidelines." "And 3?" Bob asked. "3," I said. "We rewrite the bylaws. No more color. Restrictions. If someone wants a pink house, they get a pink house. If someone wants a blue roof, they get a blue roof. We stop being a prison camp and start being a neighborhood." The room held its breath. Bob looked at Brenda. "Brenda?" Brenda looked at the crowd. She looked at me. She looked at the giant poster of the roof that someone had taped to the wall. She knew she was beaten. If she fought this, the roof stayed. If the roof stayed, she would be the face of disorderly intoxication. Forever. She slowly took off her lanyard. She placed her gavel on the table. "I resign," she whispered. She picked up her purse and walked out the back door. The room erupted. 2 weeks later, on a crisp August morning, I sat on my lawn chair in the front yard. I was wearing a t-shirt that Sal had printed up. It featured the roof photo and the text. Shades of gray. Sal was up on the roof. He had a paint sprayer. "You sure about this, boss?" he yelled down. "It's a masterpiece. The Smithsonian called." "Paint it, Sal," I said, cracking open a cold beer. We made our point. Sal shrugged. He pulled the trigger. A bright, cheerful, absolutely non-compliant shade of Caribbean blue paint sprayed over the ceramic tiles, covering Brenda's screaming mouth. It was over. The tyranny was dead. The roof was blue. Old man Jenkins walked by with his dog. He stopped and looked at the blue roof. It's bright, he noted. It sure is, I said. Brenda put her condo up for sale, he told me, moving to a retirement community in Florida, one of those places with strict noise curfews. She'll be happy there, I said. She can organize the bingo cards. You know, Jenkins said, squinting at the roof, if you look closely, you can still kind of see the outline of her eyes under the blue paint. I smiled. I know, I said. It's a reminder. Freedom isn't free, Jenkins. Sometimes it costs 20 grand and a lot of ceramic tile. Worth it, Jenkins said. Worth it, I agreed. I took a sip of my beer and watched as Sal painted over the last bit of the mugshot. The nightmare was over, but I kept the extra tiles in the garage, just in case the new treasurer got any bright ideas about the height of my fence. Because if there's one thing I learned, it's that you don't mess with a man's roof, especially if he knows the hex code for spite.